On my first day in my new home, my stepbrother looked me up and down and said, "You'll never be part of this family." He made my life hell thinking I'd always be under his control. But 10 years later he stood in front of me begging because I was now. The day I moved into the Mitchell mansion, my stepbrother Nathan looked at me like I was dirt on his designer shoes. "This isn't your home," he'd sneered, "and it never will be." Now, a decade later, he stood before me in the same mansion, but this time he wasn't sneering. This time he was begging. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey of revenge and redemption. If you're enjoying these stories of power dynamics and family transformation, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us build this thriving community. Let's dive in. But let me take you back to where it all began. The Mitchell name wasn't just a family legacy. It was an empire built on steel, glass, and 3 generations of calculated business moves. At its helm stood Ryan Mitchell, a man whose reputation for brilliance was matched only by his recent tragedy. The death of his wife Caroline in a car accident had left both the company and their son Nathan adrift. I remember the first time I set foot in Mitchell Enterprises. The marble lobby gleamed like freshly fallen snow, and the elevator whispered as it carried us to the executive floor. My mother, Haley, squeezed my hand reassuringly. She'd recently been promoted to marketing director, and at 46, her elegance and innovative strategies had caught more than just the board's attention. Ryan Mitchell saw in her what others missed. Not just beauty, but a brilliant mind that could revolutionize his company. Their courtship was brief but sincere. Love, it seemed, could bloom even in the sterile environment of corporate boardrooms. Nathan, however, saw our arrival differently. At 22, he was the presumed heir to Mitchell Enterprises, groomed since birth for a position he believed was his birthright. The day we moved in, I found him in his father's study, lounging in a leather chair that probably cost more than my entire college semester. "Let me make something crystal clear," he drawled, swirling aged scotch in a crystal tumbler. "This little rags to riches story you and your mother are playing at? It ends the moment my father realizes his mistake." His blue eyes, so like his father's, held none of Ryan's warmth. "You're 20, barely out of community college and completely out of your depth." I'd stood there, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "We're not here to take anything from you, Nathan." His laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "No? Then why did your mother pursue a recently widowed billionaire? Wake up, little sister. Gold diggers come in all forms, even ones with MBA aspirations." The weeks that followed set the tone for our new family dynamic. Nathan orchestrated a subtle campaign of exclusion that would have made Machiavelli proud. Board meetings mysteriously rescheduled to conflict with my classes. Important family events I learned about only after they'd passed. Whispers in the hallways that stopped the moment I appeared. Ryan remained blind to it all, too consumed by his new happiness and the demands of running a global corporation. My mother advised patience, reminding me that success was the best revenge. But watching Nathan preen and posture in his tailored suits, flaunting his Harvard Business School pedigree, though he'd later drop out, tested every ounce of my restraint. The mansion itself became a battlefield of silent warfare. Every morning, Nathan made sure I overheard his calls to board members, dropping casual mentions of his future plans for the company. Every evening he'd remind me of my place. The outsider, the pretender, the unwanted addition to his perfect world. But Nathan's greatest weakness was his own arrogance. While he focused on maintaining his image as the golden heir, he failed to notice what was happening right under his nose. I watched, learned, and most importantly, I documented everything. Every slight, every underhanded comment, every questionable business decision he made when his father wasn't looking. The breaking point came during a charity gala hosted at the mansion. Nathan had been drinking heavily, his carefully maintained facade cracking under the influence of expensive scotch. As I discussed potential market expansions with a board member, he interrupted with a laugh that drew every eye in the room. "Isn't it precious?" he announced, loud enough to silence all other conversations. "The little stepsister thinking she understands business. Tell me, Olivia, did you learn about market dynamics before or after your mother seduced my father?" The silence that followed was deafening. But as I stood there, feeling hundreds of eyes on me, something crystallized in my mind. Nathan's greatest mistake wasn't his cruelty. It was his underestimation. He saw me as a threat to his inheritance but failed to recognize me as a threat to his empire. That night, standing in my room overlooking the Boston skyline, I made myself a promise. Nathan Mitchell, who had everything handed to him since birth, would learn that true power isn't inherited, it's earned. His dismissal of me would become his greatest regret, a lesson written in the ink of corporate takeovers and boardroom coups. The game was just beginning, and Nathan had no idea he was already 3 moves behind. The morning after the charity gala, whispers of Nathan's outburst rippled through Mitchell Enterprises like wildfire. My mother, Haley, found me in the mansion's conservatory, surrounded by the exotic flowers Caroline Mitchell had once cultivated. Her face carried concern, but her eyes held something else: determination. "What Nathan said last night," she began, her voice steady despite the pain I knew she felt. "It wasn't just about you. He's lashing out because he sees what Ryan sees in us: potential for change." She took my hands in hers, their warmth anchoring me. "Your stepfather asked me to be his wife last week. I wanted to tell you first, but after last night, the news shouldn't have surprised me." I'd seen the way Ryan looked at my mother during board meetings, how he valued her insight beyond just professional courtesy. Their romance had blossomed naturally, born from late-night strategy sessions and shared visions for the company's future. Ryan saw in Haley what Nathan refused to acknowledge: a brilliant mind that had revolutionized Mitchell Enterprises' marketing approach. The wedding was a quiet affair, elegant but intimate. Nathan's absence spoke volumes, though he made sure the society pages carried his heartfelt quotes about welcoming new family. Ryan seemed to finally notice the tension, pulling his son aside for what looked like a stern conversation during the reception. But I knew better than to hope for change. What no one expected was how seamlessly my mother stepped into her new role. Haley Mitchell proved to be more than just a CEO's wife. She became his trusted advisor, bringing fresh perspectives to century-old business practices. Under her influence, Mitchell Enterprises' marketing strategies evolved, capturing markets their competitors had written off as unprofitable. "Your mother's brilliant," Ryan confided in me one evening, as we watched her charm potential investors at a business dinner. "She sees opportunities others miss, understands people in a way I never could." His eyes, usually sharp with business acumen, softened when they landed on her. I haven't felt this alive since Caroline. But with each of my mother's successes, Nathan's hostility grew more pronounced. He began undermining her initiatives in board meetings, questioning her expertise with thinly veiled contempt. "Interesting strategy," he'd drawl, lounging in his chair like a bored prince. "But perhaps someone with more traditional business experience should weigh in?" Ryan's defense of Haley was immediate and unwavering. "Your stepmother built her career from nothing," he reminded Nathan sharply after one particularly tense meeting. "She understands the modern market in ways our traditional approaches never could." The dynamics at home shifted too. What started as uncomfortable family dinners evolved into strategic planning sessions, with Ryan and Haley bouncing ideas off each other while Nathan stewed in silence. I watched, learning more about business strategy from these conversations than any textbook could teach. My mother's influence extended beyond the boardroom. She began modernizing the Mitchell mansion, not erasing Caroline's touches but enhancing them. The conservatory bloomed with new life, and the stuffy formal dining room transformed into a space that encouraged actual conversation. Even the staff seemed to breathe easier under her management. "She's trying to erase Mom's memory," Nathan accused one day, cornering me in the library. "And Father's too blind with infatuation to see it." His words carried the bitter taste of expensive scotch, a habit that was becoming increasingly noticeable. But what Nathan failed to understand was that Haley wasn't trying to replace anyone. She was creating her own legacy. Her marriage to Ryan wasn't about power or money. It was about shared vision, mutual respect, and genuine love. Every decision she made, whether for the company or our blended family, came from a place of genuine care and strategic insight. The turning point came during the company's annual shareholder meeting. Haley presented a comprehensive digital transformation strategy that would revolutionize Mitchell Enterprises' approach to global markets. The board's approval was unanimous, except for Nathan, who stormed out before the vote concluded. That evening I overheard Ryan and Nathan arguing in the study. "She's changing everything." Nathan's voice cracked with fury. "This isn't what Mom would have wanted." "Your mother," Ryan replied quietly, "would have been the first to embrace change if it meant growth." Haley isn't erasing our past, son. She's securing our future. As I stood there listening to the echoes of their argument, I realized something crucial. Nathan's hatred wasn't just about protecting his inheritance. It was about preserving a past that no longer served the present. While he clung to old ways, my mother was quietly revolutionizing the very foundation of Mitchell Enterprises. And in doing so, she had unknowingly given me the perfect blueprint for my own revolution. The game was evolving, and so were the players. Nathan might have been born into power, but I was learning how to earn it, one strategic move at a time. While Nathan drowned his frustrations in expensive scotch and boardroom tantrums, I was quietly building my own empire from within. Each morning, before the rest of the Mitchell household stirred, I slipped into the study to review international market reports. Every evening, long after the cleaning staff had gone home, I pored over the company's financial histories, learning from both their triumphs and failures. My acceptance into Harvard Business School's MBA program came with little fanfare. I made sure of that. Nathan's dramatic dropout from the same program months earlier had created enough headlines for both of us. While he spent his nights at exclusive clubs, I spent mine mastering financial models and corporate strategy. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was excelling in the very institution he'd dismissed as beneath him. Ryan noticed my dedication, though he misinterpreted its purpose. "You remind me of Caroline," he mentioned one evening, finding me analyzing quarterly reports. "She had that same fire, that drive to understand every aspect of the business." His words, meant as a compliment, only fueled my determination. I wasn't aiming to be just another Mitchell success story. I was writing my own. Between classes, I cultivated relationships with industry leaders who saw past my age to recognize my potential. Thomas Sterling, a veteran investment banker, became an unlikely mentor after I impressed him with my analysis of emerging market trends. "You've got something rare," he told me over coffee. "The patience to learn and the instinct to act. Most people have one or the other. But my most valuable education came from watching my mother navigate the corporate landscape. Haley's subtle influence had transformed Mitchell Enterprises' culture without ever seeming to force change. She taught me that true power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it works best in whispers and careful suggestions. I started taking on small projects within the company, ones beneath Nathan's notice but crucial to operations. Each success added to my growing network of allies among the middle management and staff. While Nathan commanded respect through his title, I earned it through results. The breakthrough came during a crisis with our Asian markets. Nathan had dismissed early warnings about supply chain vulnerabilities, too focused on maintaining his lavish lifestyle to notice the signs. When the problem exploded into a full-blown crisis, I was ready with a comprehensive solution that I'd been quietly developing for months. "This is remarkable work," Ryan said, reviewing my proposal during an emergency board meeting. Nathan sat across the table, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and something else, fear. For the first time, he was seeing me not as his unwanted stepsister, but as a genuine threat. My solution not only saved the company millions but also opened new opportunities in previously untapped markets. The board members who had once dismissed me as Mitchell's stepdaughter now sought my opinion on strategic decisions. I was building my reputation one calculated move at a time. Under the guise of professional development, I began attending exclusive industry events, making connections that would prove invaluable. Each handshake, each exchanged business card, was another piece in my carefully constructed network. The same social circles that Nathan took for granted, I approached with strategic precision. The most satisfying moment came during the annual Tech Innovation Conference in Singapore. Nathan had been scheduled to present Mitchell Enterprises' digital transformation strategy, a presentation he'd barely prepared for. Hours before the event, he was found nursing a hangover in his hotel room. I stepped in, delivering a presentation that earned standing ovations and, more importantly, several lucrative partnerships. "You've been holding out on us, Olivia," a board member commented afterward. "Why haven't we seen more of this?" The question was directed at Ryan, who looked both proud and thoughtful. Nathan, watching from the back of the room, gripped his water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. That evening, I stood on my hotel balcony, watching Singapore's skyline glitter like a constellation of opportunities. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from industry leaders and potential investors. Each one represented another crack in Nathan's presumed birthright. But the true victory wasn't in the applause or the contracts. It was in the subtle shift of power I felt in the boardroom the next morning. Nathan's voice, once dominant in every meeting, was now just one among many. His opinions, previously taken as gospel, were being questioned, challenged, and often dismissed. I caught his reflection in the boardroom's glass walls, the perfect air, watching his kingdom slowly slip through his fingers. He hadn't lost yet, but for the first time he could see the possibility of defeat. And in that moment, staring at his shaken reflection, I knew the game was about to enter its next phase. The hidden genius was hidden no longer, and Nathan's worst nightmare was just beginning to unfold. The morning after the Singapore conference, I launched the first phase of my master plan. Using the capital I'd quietly accumulated through strategic investments, I established Winter Innovations, a tech startup that would become the cornerstone of my empire. The name was a subtle nod to my past before I became a Mitchell, when my mother and I had nothing but our determination. The business world's reaction was immediate. Young Mitchell heiress ventures solo, the headlines proclaimed, though I was quick to correct them. I'm not a Mitchell heiress, I told Forbes in my first interview. I'm Olivia Winters and I'm building something of my own. The message was clear. I wasn't riding on the Mitchell name, I was creating my own legacy. My first acquisition was a small but innovative software company that Mitchell Enterprises had overlooked. Nathan had dismissed them as too small to matter, another oversight born of his arrogance. Within 6 months, our revolutionary supply chain management system was dominating the market, drawing clients away from Mitchell Enterprises' outdated solutions. Impressive move, Thomas Sterling commented during one of our regular strategy sessions. You're not just building a company, you're creating a narrative that the market loves. The self-made woman challenging the old guard. His smile held a mixture of pride and anticipation. Nathan must be furious. He was more than furious. During a family dinner he finally confronted me. Is this your idea of revenge? He demanded, his composure cracking. Stealing our clients with cut-rate technology? I met his gaze steadily. No, Nathan. This is business. Something you might understand if you spent more time innovating and less time trading on your last name. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Ryan looked taken aback by my directness. Winter Innovations grew exponentially. Each acquisition was strategic, building towards a capability that would directly compete with Mitchell Enterprises' core businesses. I worked 18-hour days, personally overseeing every major decision. While Nathan attended charity galas and yacht parties, I was in the trenches, building something unprecedented. The turning point came when I secured a partnership with Mitchell Enterprises' largest competitor. The deal made headlines not just for its size but for its implications. Winter Innovations, the new face of tech innovation, declared the Wall Street Journal. The article specifically noted how our approach differed from traditional companies like Mitchell Enterprises. Nathan's response was predictable. He tried to have our contracts with shared clients invalidated, claiming conflict of interest due to my family connection. The attempt backfired spectacularly when those same clients publicly defended Winter Innovations' superior service and innovation. Your brother's getting sloppy, my mother observed one evening, finding me in my home office reviewing acquisition proposals. He's letting emotions cloud his judgment. She wasn't wrong. Nathan's increasingly erratic decisions were causing concern among Mitchell Enterprises board members. Through carefully placed sources, I learned that Nathan had begun liquidating his personal shares in Mitchell Enterprises to fund a lavish lifestyle that even his generous allowance couldn't sustain. Each sale was an opportunity, and through a network of shell companies, I was quietly becoming one of Mitchell Enterprises' largest shareholders. The business world watched with fascination as Winter Innovations continued its meteoric rise. We were winning awards for innovation, sustainability, and corporate culture. The contrast with Mitchell Enterprises' declining market share and traditional approach couldn't have been starker. Ryan, ever the astute businessman, saw the writing on the wall. During a private meeting in his study, he broached the subject I'd been waiting for. You've built something remarkable, Olivia, he said, swirling his scotch thoughtfully. Something that could secure Mitchell Enterprises' future, if we were to explore a merger. I kept my expression neutral, though inside my heart raced. That would be a significant change in leadership structure, I replied carefully. The board would need to be convinced it's in the company's best interest. His next words confirmed what I'd suspected. Nathan's position wasn't as secure as he believed. The board is already asking questions about succession planning. Your brother's recent decisions have raised concerns. As I left Ryan's study that evening, I caught sight of Nathan watching from the shadows of the hallway. The anger in his eyes told me he'd overheard everything. But for once there was something else there too, fear. The golden heir was finally realizing that his kingdom was built on sand, and the tide was coming in. The next phase of my plan was ready to begin, and Nathan's worst nightmare was about to become reality. The phoenix wasn't just rising, it was preparing to reshape the entire landscape. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a crisp autumn morning. I arrived early, watching the sunrise paint Mitchell Tower in shades of gold. Fitting, considering what was about to unfold. The boardroom, with its sweeping views of Boston's skyline, had been the stage for countless power plays over the years. Today would be its most dramatic yet. Nathan burst through the doors at 8:57, his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. The dark circles under his eyes and slightly askew tie told the story of a sleepless night. His eyes narrowed when they met mine, but I merely smiled. The chess pieces were already in motion. Before we begin, I addressed the board, rising from my seat. I believe there are some matters of ownership that need to be clarified. With practiced calm, I distributed folders containing documents that would shatter Nathan's world. Over the past 18 months, Winter Innovations has acquired a controlling interest in Mitchell Enterprises through various subsidiaries. The silence that followed was absolute. Nathan's face drained of color as he frantically flipped through the papers. Each page revealed another piece of the puzzle. The shell companies, the quiet acquisitions, the strategic positioning that had been happening right under his nose. "This is impossible," he sputtered, but the numbers didn't lie. Through careful maneuvering and Nathan's own careless selling of shares, I now controlled 51% of Mitchell Enterprises. The empire he thought was his birthright had slipped through his fingers while he was busy maintaining his playboy image. Ryan sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as he reviewed the documentation. "Everything appears to be in order," he finally said, his voice carrying a mix of pride and resignation. "The acquisition is legally sound." "This is a joke." Nathan stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "Father, you can't seriously be considering this. She's not even a real Mitchell." "No," I agreed, my voice steady. "I'm something better. I'm the CEO who's going to save this company from your mismanagement." Turning to the board, I presented my comprehensive restructuring plan. Mitchell Enterprises' market share has dropped 15% under current leadership. Our traditional approaches are failing in a digital age. Merger with Winter Innovations isn't just an option. It's a necessity. The presentation that followed was meticulous, highlighting the synergies between the companies and the clear path to market dominance. While Nathan had been hosting yacht parties, I'd been crafting a vision for the future that the board couldn't ignore. One by one, the board members voiced their support. Even those who had once dismissed me as the stepdaughter couldn't deny the logic of the merger. Nathan watched in horror as his allies abandoned him, swayed by the undeniable potential of the combined enterprises. I moved to approve the merger and the appointment of Olivia Winters as CEO of the combined entity, Thomas Sterling announced, his voice carrying the weight of his decades of influence. The vote that followed was nearly unanimous. Nathan's last hope died when Ryan raised his hand in favor. "The business world isn't about birthright anymore," he said, looking directly at his son. "It's about innovation, vision, and the courage to embrace change. Olivia has proven she has all three." As the reality of his situation sank in, Nathan's composure finally shattered. "This was your plan all along," he accused, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Everything, befriending board members, expanding into our markets, even that stupid supply chain solution. It was all about taking what's mine." "No, Nathan," I replied calmly, standing to my full height. "It was about earning what you took for granted. The difference between us isn't just strategy. It's understanding that power isn't a birthright, it's a responsibility." The meeting concluded with the formal announcement of my appointment as CEO. As board members filed out, offering congratulations, I caught my mother's eye across the room. Her subtle nod carried years of shared understanding. We had both risen from nothing, fought against prejudice and dismissal, and emerged stronger. Nathan remained slumped in his chair, staring out at the city that had watched his fall from grace. "What happens to me now?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I placed a contract in front of him. "You have two choices. Accept a position under my leadership, learn the business properly this time and earn your place. Or walk away with your trust fund. Either way, the days of your unchecked authority are over." As I left the boardroom, my heels clicking against the marble floors that had once intimidated me, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. 10 years ago, I'd stood in this same building, bearing the weight of Nathan's contempt. Now I carried something far heavier: the responsibility of leading two merged empires into the future. The game was over, but the real work was just beginning. 3 weeks after the takeover, I sat in what was once Nathan's corner office, now transformed to reflect my vision. Gone were the gaudy gold fixtures and pretentious oil paintings, replaced by sleek modern designs and wall-to-wall digital displays showing real-time company metrics. The view of Boston's skyline remained the same, but everything else had changed. Nathan had chosen to stay, though not out of loyalty or desire for redemption. His trust fund, I discovered, was nearly depleted through years of extravagant spending. He needed the job and we both knew it. Now he sat across from me, reviewing the quarterly reports I'd assigned him, a task he'd previously delegated to junior analysts. "These numbers don't make sense," he muttered, frustration evident in his voice. "How did we lose market share in the Asian sector when the projections were so strong? Perhaps if you'd attended the strategy meetings instead of sending representatives, you'd understand," I replied, not bothering to look up from my tablet. "The market changed. We adapted. That's why Winter Innovations succeeded where Mitchell Enterprises failed." The daily humiliation of reporting to his former stepsister was clearly taking its toll. Nathan's designer suits had been replaced by more modest attire, his arrogant swagger reduced to a hesitant shuffle. Every morning he had to walk past the office that was once his birthright, now bearing my name in elegant silver letters. During board meetings, I made sure Nathan presented his own analysis rather than relying on his team. Each stumble, each moment of uncertainty, reinforced what the board already knew: they'd made the right choice in supporting the merger. His once loyal supporters now directed their questions to me, treating him like any other middle manager. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he accused one evening, catching me alone in the executive lounge. "Making me jump through hoops, watching me struggle with basic reports." I set down my coffee, meeting his gaze steadily. "What I enjoy, Nathan, is running this company effectively. Something you never bothered to learn how to do. Every task I assign you is an opportunity to prove you deserve your position. Not because of your last name, but because of your capabilities." The merger's success exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Our stock price soared as we introduced innovations that seamlessly blended Mitchell Enterprises' established infrastructure with Winter Innovations' cutting-edge technology. The market responded enthusiastically to our new direction, and competitors scrambled to keep up. Nathan's redemption, however, was proving more challenging than his fall. During a crucial client presentation, he faltered, unable to answer basic questions about our new integrated systems. The client's representatives exchanged uncomfortable glances as I stepped in to salvage the meeting. "You set me up to fail," he accused afterward, his face flushed with humiliation. "You knew I wasn't ready for that presentation." "No, Nathan. You set yourself up to fail years ago when you decided that your name was enough to guarantee success." I handed him a folder of technical specifications. "Learn these. Understand them. Your next presentation is in 2 weeks." The transformation of the company culture was dramatic. Employees who had once feared Nathan's volatile temper now thrived under my leadership. Innovation wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. Merit, not lineage, determined advancement. During a charity gala, the same event where Nathan had once publicly humiliated me, I watched him working the room with a newfound humility. He was learning slowly but surely that respect had to be earned. The whispers that followed him now weren't about his power or influence, but about his fall from grace. "Your brother seems different," Ryan observed, joining me at the bar. "Less entitled," I supplied. Amazing what actual responsibility can do. The sweet taste of victory wasn't in watching Nathan struggle. It was in watching the company flourish. Each successful quarter, each innovative launch, each satisfied client validated my vision. The empire Nathan had taken for granted was being reshaped into something stronger, more dynamic and undeniably mine. 1 year after the takeover, I called Nathan into my office. The skyline behind me was bathed in the golden light of sunset, a reminder of how much had changed. "You've completed your probationary period," I informed him. "The board has reviewed your performance." He sat straighter, a flash of his old confidence returning. "And?" I slid a document across the desk. "You're being promoted to head of regional operations. You've earned it, not because you're a Mitchell, but because you finally learned what that name should mean. Dedication, innovation, and humility." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. 10 years ago he'd sneered that I'd never be part of his family. Now I was teaching him how to live up to his own name. The sweet taste of power wasn't in the victory itself. It was in reshaping the very legacy he'd once lorded over me. The promotion marked a turning point, but not in the way anyone expected. As head of regional operations, Nathan finally had a chance to prove himself. And that's exactly when the facade began to crack. The first signs were subtle. Missed deadlines, inconsistent reports, and an increasing tendency to delegate crucial responsibilities. I watched from my office as he slowly unraveled. The pressure of actually earning his position, of being held accountable for real results, was proving too much for someone who'd spent his life coasting on the Mitchell name. During board meetings, his presentations became increasingly erratic, filled with grandiose promises he couldn't keep. The breaking point came during a routine audit. Our financial team discovered discrepancies in the regional accounts. Nothing illegal, but enough corner-cutting and mismanagement to raise serious concerns. Nathan had been masking losses with creative accounting, desperately trying to maintain the illusion of success. "Care to explain this?" I asked, spreading the audit reports across my desk. Nathan's face, already pale, turned ashen. The numbers told a story of incompetence masked by desperation. "I can fix it," he stammered, his confident facade crumbling. "Just give me time to restructure the department. The losses aren't as bad as they look." "The losses aren't the problem, Nathan. The deception is." I leaned back in my chair watching him squirm. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? That the same attention to detail that built this company wouldn't catch your mistakes?" The board meeting that followed was brutal. Every shortcut, every hidden loss, every instance of mismanagement was laid bare. Nathan sat there, his designer tie askew as his house of cards collapsed around him. The board members who had once praised his family name now looked at him with undisguised contempt. "This is unacceptable," Thomas Sterling declared, his voice heavy with disappointment. "The Mitchell name used to stand for integrity. Now it seems to represent nothing but smoke and mirrors." Ryan, watching his son's public humiliation, aged years in those few hours. The man who had built an empire on trust and innovation now had to witness his heir apparent reveal himself as nothing more than a skilled pretender. "I move for immediate suspension pending a full investigation," another board member proposed. The vote was unanimous. Nathan, the golden boy who once thought himself untouchable, was escorted from the building by security. The press had a field day. "Mitchell heir suspended amid financial scandal," screamed the headlines. Every news outlet that had once celebrated his birthright now dissected his fall with savage glee. The very privilege he'd wielded as a weapon had become his greatest vulnerability. In the aftermath, I discovered just how deep the rot went. Nathan had been borrowing heavily against his trust fund, trying to maintain the lifestyle he thought he deserved. His apartment was mortgaged to the hilt, his investments were leveraged beyond reason, and his reputation in the business world was in tatters. "I never wanted it to end like this," he confessed during a private meeting in my office. The arrogant stepbrother who had once looked down on me now couldn't even meet my eyes. "Everything I touched turned to ash." "Because you never learned to build," I replied. "You only knew how to spend and pretend." The Mitchell legacy deserved better than that. The investigation concluded with a damning report. While no criminal charges were filed, the evidence of mismanagement and deception was overwhelming. The board's decision was unanimous. Nathan Mitchell would be removed from all operational roles within the company. As he cleared out his office, I watched from my doorway. The designer suits and premium watches were gone, replaced by off-the-rack clothing that better reflected his new reality. Each box he packed was another piece of his shattered legacy. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That depends on you, I answered. The Mitchell name still means something in this city, but not because of birthright. It means something because of what we build, what we earn, and how we conduct ourselves. You have a choice. Learn those lessons or keep living in denial. As he walked out of Mitchell Tower for the last time, I thought about that first day when he'd sneered at me, declaring I'd never be part of his family. The irony was complete. He had become the outsider, while I had become the guardian of his family's true legacy. The house of cards had fallen, but from its ruins something stronger would rise. Something built on merit, not inheritance. Something worthy of the Mitchell name. The Mitchell mansion felt different the Sunday after Nathan's departure. The usual family dinner, a tradition my mother had stubbornly maintained through all our years of tension, held an air of funeral solemnity. Ryan sat at the head of the table, aging decades in days, pushing food around his plate without eating. He's staying at the lake house. My mother broke the silence, her voice gentle but firm. I've made sure the staff there will keep an eye on him. Even now, Haley's practical nature showed through. Always finding solutions, always managing crises. Ryan looked up, his eyes hollow. I failed him, didn't I? Somewhere between building this empire and trying to preserve Caroline's memory, I missed the signs. My son became exactly what I never wanted. Entitled, reckless, empty. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. For all my calculated moves, for all my justified revenge, I hadn't fully considered how this would affect the man who had welcomed us into his life, who had treated me with more fatherly care than Nathan had ever shown brotherly love. You didn't fail him. My mother reached for Ryan's hand. Nathan made his own choices. We all tried to help him understand what real responsibility means. The following weeks brought changes to our family dynamic that none of us had anticipated. Ryan threw himself into philanthropic work, perhaps seeking redemption through giving back to the community. My mother balanced her time between supporting her husband and maintaining stability in the company's marketing division. And I discovered that victory carried its own kind of loneliness. The media circus intensified, digging into every aspect of our family history. Old photos surfaced. Nathan and his mother Caroline at charity events, school graduations, family vacations. Each image seemed designed to paint me as the villain who had destroyed an American dynasty. The fact that I had earned my position through merit rather than manipulation was conveniently overlooked. One evening I found Ryan in his study, surrounded by old family albums. Caroline would have liked you, he said without looking up. She believed in earning success, not inheriting it. That's what I forgot to teach our son. I never meant to destroy your family, I admitted, surprising myself with the truth in those words. He finally met my eyes. You didn't destroy it, Olivia. You showed us what it should have been all along. Nathan's fall is not your burden to bear. The conversation with my mother came later that week, over late-night coffee in the kitchen. Are you happy? She asked simply. Not successful. I know you're that. But happy? The question caught me off guard. In all my careful planning, in all my strategic moves, I had never stopped to consider happiness. I'm satisfied, I answered carefully. That's not the same thing, she smiled sadly. Power can be lonely, sweetheart. Make sure your victory doesn't become your prison. The truth of her words hit home during the annual Mitchell Foundation Gala. I stood at the podium, delivering a speech about the company's new direction, and caught sight of Nathan's empty seat. The victory felt hollow, somehow incomplete. The revenge I'd pursued for so long had left a void that success couldn't quite fill. Ryan's health began to suffer under the strain. Though he never said it directly, watching his son's public downfall had taken a toll. The man who had once commanded boardrooms with his presence now seemed diminished, weighted down by regret and what-ifs. He needs his son, my mother said one evening, finding me working late in my home office. Not the entitled boy who thought the world owed him everything, but the man he could become. If he's willing to learn. Her words stirred something unexpected in me. The satisfaction of watching Nathan's fall had begun to fade, replaced by a different kind of ambition. Perhaps true victory wasn't in destruction but in transformation. Not just of the company but of the family that, despite everything, I had become part of. I found myself driving to the lake house the next morning. The guards looked surprised to see me but let me through without question. Nathan sat on the deck, staring out at the water, a shadow of his former self. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by casual wear that seemed to better suit him somehow. As I walked toward him, I realized that the price of power wasn't just measured in stock prices and board votes. It was measured in the weight of responsibilities, in the understanding that true leadership sometimes meant finding strength and forgiveness. The conversation we were about to have would change everything, again. But this time perhaps for the better. Nathan didn't stand when I approached the deck, but his shoulders tensed, acknowledging my presence. The morning mist rolled off the lake, shrouding us in a strange intimacy that felt appropriate for what was to come. The silence stretched between us, heavy with a decade of rivalry, pain, and unspoken truths. "Have you come to gloat?" His voice was hoarse, lacking its usual polished edge. "To see how far the mighty have fallen?" I took a seat beside him, watching the ripples on the water. "No. I came because it's time we had an honest conversation. Something we should have done 10 years ago when you first decided I was your enemy." He laughed, a hollow sound that held no humor. "Honest? You systematically dismantled everything I had, everything I was supposed to be. What's left to be honest about? The fact that you never had to be my enemy," I turned to face him. "That your birthright wasn't under threat until you made it your whole identity. That you could have been so much more than just Ryan Mitchell's son." The words hung in the air between us. Nathan's hands gripped the armrests of his chair, knuckles white with tension. For the first time I saw him not as my tormentor or my rival, but as someone who had been trapped by his own expectations. "Dad's sick, isn't he?" he asked quietly. "I see it in the papers how tired he looks at events. The board meetings he's been missing." I nodded. "The stress of everything. It's taken its toll. He misses his son, Nathan. Not the heir, not the businessman, his son." A lone tear traced down his cheek, quickly wiped away. "I don't know how to be that anymore. I'm not sure I ever did." "Then learn," I said simply. "Not for the company, not for the Mitchell name, but for yourself. The position of Regional Operations Director is still open. You'd start from the bottom this time, no shortcuts, no special treatment. Learn the business the right way." He turned to me, suspicion warring with hope in his eyes. "Why would you give me another chance? After everything I did to you?" "Because revenge brought me power, but it didn't bring me peace," I admitted. "And maybe, just maybe, redemption is a better legacy than retribution." The next few months transformed both the company and our family in ways I never expected. Nathan returned to Mitchell Enterprises, not as the entitled heir, but as a junior executive willing to learn. Every morning he arrived early, diving into reports and market analyses with a dedication that surprised everyone. Ryan's health improved as he watched his son's genuine efforts at change. The light returned to his eyes, especially during the weekly dinners where Nathan would eagerly share what he'd learned. My mother, ever the peacemaker, helped bridge the awkward moments with her natural grace. The board members who had once scorned Nathan began to notice his transformation. His presentations, now backed by real understanding rather than bravado, carried weight. He wasn't trying to prove he deserved his name anymore. He was earning his place. 1 year after that morning at the lake house, I called Nathan into my office. The same office where I had once stripped him of everything he thought defined him. But this time the dynamic was different. "The Shanghai expansion project needs a leader," I said, sliding a proposal across my desk. "Someone who understands both our traditional strengths and our need for innovation. The board unanimously recommended you." He stared at the document, then back at me. "This isn't pity, is it? You know me better than that now," I smiled. "You earned this. Every presentation, every late night, every humble moment. You built this opportunity brick by brick." As he left my office, I thought about that first day when he'd looked down at me with contempt. We'd both changed since then. His arrogance had been replaced by earned confidence. My desire for revenge transformed into something more meaningful: leadership. That evening, as our family gathered for dinner, I watched Nathan interact with Ryan and my mother. The tension that had once defined our relationships had evolved into a comfortable understanding. We weren't just a merged family anymore. We were something stronger, survivors who had learned to build rather than destroy. 10 years ago, Nathan raised his glass in a toast. "I told you you'd never be part of this family. I've never been more grateful to be proven wrong." The empire we now shared wasn't built on birthright or revenge. It was founded on something far more powerful: the ability to grow, to learn, and to forgive. In the end, that was the greatest victory of all.